The Galactic Academy's grand cafeteria buzzed with the usual chaos of 1,000 different species trying to coexist over lunch. Floating platforms carried trays of exotic meals, some still writhing, others glowing with bioluminescent spices. The air thrummed with translator devices working overtime, converting clicks, whistles, and roars into something resembling civilized conversation. At the center of this supposed sanctuary of learning, Kree'tok, the Crusher, held court like some barbaric king. The Vorthak warrior student stood nearly 3 meters tall, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the artificial suns. 4 arms rippled with muscle that could bend steel, while his mandibles clicked in amusement as he watched a trembling Pixari student desperately trying to gather scattered homework tablets from the floor. Oops. Kree'tok's voice boomed across the cafeteria, his translator rendering his native growls into mocking standard galactic. Clumsy little bug. Maybe you should crawl back to your hive world where you belong. His gang of sycophants, a mix of brutish species who mistook cruelty for strength, erupted in harsh laughter. They formed a perfect circle of intimidation around their victims, blocking escape routes with practiced efficiency. This wasn't their first rodeo, and everyone knew it wouldn't be their last. But in the far corner of the cafeteria, completely removed from this display of adolescent savagery, sat Maya Chen. The human girl occupied a table meant for 6, entirely alone. Her movements were precise, methodical, almost mechanical as she worked through what appeared to be standard academy nutrition paste. Fork up. Chew exactly 15 times. Swallow. Repeat. Her dark eyes remained fixed on her meal, seemingly oblivious to the chaos around her. Look at that one, hissed Veltar, Kree'tok's lieutenant, a serpentine SSS Lithian whose venom sacs pulsed with excitement. The soft skin from the mudball planet. Earth, wasn't it? Such a pathetic little Deathworld. The irony was lost on every alien in that cafeteria. They used the term Deathworld like it was some kind of joke, as if surviving on a planet that actively tried to kill you somehow made you weaker instead of stronger. To them, humans were just another soft species that had somehow stumbled into space travel through dumb luck and borrowed technology. Kree'tok's compound eyes swiveled toward Maya's table, and his mandibles spread in what passed for a grin among his kind. Perfect. I was getting bored with the usual squeakers and crawlers. Let's see what happens when we introduce some real fear to a Deathworlder. The gang began their approach, moving with the confident swagger of predators who had never encountered anything they couldn't break. Other students quickly cleared out of their path, some pulling out recording devices to capture what they assumed would be another routine humiliation. Maya continued eating, her expression unchanged, as if she hadn't noticed the approaching storm of violence and mockery. She reached for her water container with the same mechanical precision, took exactly 3 sips, and set it down with barely a sound. The calm before the hurricane had never looked so deceptively peaceful. Kree'tok's massive form loomed over Maya's table like a living shadow. Without warning, he grabbed a tray of steaming Zephyrian slime noodles from a passing student and upended it directly onto Maya's head. The purple, gelatinous mess splattered across her dark hair and dripped down her uniform, pooling on the table around her carefully arranged meal. The cafeteria fell silent. Every conversation stopped. Every translator device seemed to hold its breath. Kree'tok's mandibles clicked in anticipation. This was the moment. The beautiful instant when his victim would break. They always did. First came the shock, then the tears, then the desperate pleading that made his day complete. But Maya Chen simply reached for her napkin. She wiped the purple slime from her face with the same methodical precision she'd used to eat her meal. Dab, dab, fold, dab, dab, fold. She cleaned her hands next, then calmly moved her water container away from the spreading mess. Throughout it all, her expression remained completely neutral, not angry, not afraid, not even particularly annoyed. What the void? Muttered Zixander, the Zilani trader's son, his crystalline features reflecting his confusion. Why isn't she crying? Maybe she's broken already, laughed Helix Ion, the prince from the crystal worlds, his body chiming like wind-blown glass. Look at her. She's just sitting there like some kind of robot. The gang exchanged uncertain glances. This wasn't following the script. Victims were supposed to react, to give them the satisfaction of visible fear or anger. Maya's calm was unnatural, unsettling, wrong. Kree'tok's frustration bubbled over. "Hey, mud crawler, I'm talking to you." He slammed one of his 4 fists onto the table, sending Maya's utensils clattering. "Look at me when I'm humiliating you." Maya took another bite of her meal. Somehow she'd managed to salvage a portion that wasn't contaminated. She chewed exactly 15 times, swallowed, then looked up at Kree'tok with eyes that were absolutely, terrifyingly empty of any emotion whatsoever. "Please move," she said quietly. "You're blocking my light." The simplicity of it stunned everyone. No anger, no fear, no defiance, just a polite request, as if Kree'tok were nothing more than a minor inconvenience. "Move." Kree'tok's roar shook the nearby tables. "I'll show you moving." He grabbed Maya's shoulder with one massive claw and shoved her backward. Her chair skidded 3 feet, but she maintained perfect posture, never spilling a drop from her water container. Around them, other students began pulling out their personal recording devices. This was too bizarre not to document. The feeds would be viral within minutes. Deathworld human shows no fear. Or Earth girl breaks under pressure. "She's not even human," whispered a Tenthari student, its translator struggling with the rapid-fire clicks of its native language. "Humans are supposed to have emotions, right? This one's like ice." Veltar slithered closer, his hood flaring with irritation. "Maybe we need to get more creative. Earth spawn. Your pathetic species doesn't even deserve to breathe the same recycled air as real civilizations." Maya calmly set down her fork and picked up her napkin again. She wiped a small splash of sauce from her wrist with the same mechanical precision, then folded the napkin neatly beside her tray. Helix Ion's crystalline form pulsed with malevolent light. "I heard Earth creatures are pack animals. Maybe she's waiting for her alpha to save her." His chiming laughter rang through the suddenly quiet cafeteria. But it was Maya's complete lack of response that was starting to unnerve everyone except the 3 bullies, humans, who were now too invested in their performance to recognize the growing tension around them. The background murmur of nervous alien students grew louder. Something was very, very wrong with this picture. Kree'tok's patience finally shattered like cheap glass. His forearms moved with predatory coordination as he grabbed the back of Maya's chair and spun it around with enough force to send most beings tumbling to the floor. But Maya simply rotated with the motion, her posture unchanged, her hands still resting calmly in her lap. The Vorthak warrior crouched down until his massive head was level with hers, close enough that his acidic breath fogged the air between them. His compound eyes glittered with malicious satisfaction as he prepared to deliver the psychological blow that would finally crack this infuriating human's composure. "Listen carefully, little mud spawn," he hissed, his translator struggling to convey the pure venom in his native tongue. "I've crushed the bones of warriors twice your size. I've made hegemony soldiers beg for their mothers before I was even half grown. Your pathetic little Deathworld couldn't produce anything that could even scratch my exoskeleton." Maya looked up at him with those same dead calm eyes, dark, placid pools that reflected nothing back. Her voice, when she spoke, was barely above a whisper, yet somehow it carried clearly through the hushed cafeteria. "Please, leave me alone." It wasn't a plea. It wasn't a demand. It was simply a statement of fact, delivered with the same tone one might use to mention the weather or request directions. Kree'tok's mandibles spread wide in what his species considered the ultimate expression of contempt. "Please?" His laughter boomed across the cafeteria like thunder. "Did you hear that, everyone?" The Deathworlder said please. He turned his head to address his audience, playing to the crowd. "This is what Earth produces. Polite little prey animals who say please while predators devour them." Veltar and Helix Ion joined in the laughter, their alien voices creating a cacophony of mockery that echoed off the cafeteria's vaulted ceiling. Recording devices captured every second, broadcasting the humiliation across social networks that spanned the galaxy. But when Kree'tok turned back to Maya, expecting to see the first cracks in her composure, he found those same emotionless eyes staring back at him. Not a muscle in her face had moved. She hadn't even blinked. Something primal stirred in the deepest part of his warrior brain, an ancient instinct that whispered warnings he was too arrogant to hear. "You know what your problem is, little human," Kree'tok snarled, his frustration boiling over into rage. "You don't understand respect. Let me teach you." His massive claw shot out and wrapped around Maya's throat with enough pressure to crush a steel pipe. He lifted slightly, forcing her to look up at him, expecting to finally see fear bloom in those dark eyes. Maya's expression didn't change. She didn't struggle. She didn't gasp. She simply looked at him with the same mechanical calm she'd shown throughout the entire ordeal, as if being strangled was just another minor inconvenience to endure. "Pathetic," Kree'tok spat, tightening his grip. "Your entire species is." Maya's left hand moved. It didn't fly up in panic. It didn't flail desperately at his arm. It simply rose from her lap in one fluid, controlled motion, casual as reaching for a glass of water. Her fingers found the junction where Kree'tok's massive head connected to his armored neck, positioned themselves with surgical precision, and then, crack. The sound echoed through the cafeteria like a gunshot. Sharp, final, absolute. Kree'tok's compound eyes went wide with shock. His grip on Maya's throat loosened immediately as his nervous system sent out confused signals to limbs that no longer responded. For a moment that stretched into eternity, he remained frozen in that crouched position, his brain struggling to process what had just happened. Then gravity took over. 3 meters and 400 kilograms of Vorthak warrior collapsed to the floor with a sound like a building falling down. His exoskeleton cracked against the metal decking, and his massive limbs twitched once before going completely still. Maya calmly lowered her hand back to her lap. She reached for her fork, speared another bite of her meal, and began chewing with the same mechanical precision she'd maintained throughout the entire encounter. 15 chews. Swallow. Reach for the water container. She had never stood up. She had never raised her voice. She had never stopped eating. The only indication that anything unusual had happened was the slight adjustment she made to avoid the growing pool of blue-green fluid seeping from beneath Kree'tok's motionless form. The cafeteria remained frozen in absolute silence, 1,000 different species united in a single moment of pure, uncomprehending shock. Maya took another bite of her meal and continued her lunch as if nothing at all had occurred. The silence that followed was not merely quiet, it was a complete absence of sound so profound that the cafeteria's ventilation systems seemed to roar like spacecraft engines. 1,000 beings from across the galaxy sat frozen, their various respiratory systems locked in collective held breath, staring at the impossible scene before them. Kree'tok the Crusher, 3 meters of chitinous armor and muscle that had terrorized smaller species across 3 star systems, lay motionless on the polished floor. His massive form created a shadow that stretched halfway across the dining area, and the unnatural angle of his head told the story that no one wanted to believe. Veltar was the first to move. The Escalates' serpentine body recoiled so violently that he knocked over 2 tables in his haste to put distance between himself and the human girl. His venom sacs had gone completely pale, and his forked tongue flicked frantically at the air as if trying to taste danger. That's impossible," he whispered, his translator crackling with static from his rapid, panicked speech. She barely moved. Helix Ion's crystalline form had lost all its previous luster. The prince of the crystal worlds now resembled dull, clouded glass, his internal light flickering like a dying star. We should." His chiming voice trailed off as he stumbled backward, his usual arrogance replaced by primal terror. Maya reached for her napkin and dabbed at a small drop of sauce that had fallen onto her uniform during the commotion. She folded the napkin with the same precise movements, placed it beside her tray, and took another sip of water. Her expression remained as neutral as it had been throughout the entire encounter. The spell broke when someone's recording device clattered to the floor. The sound triggered a chain reaction of whispered conversations, panicked calls for help, and the scraping of chairs as students either fled toward the exits or pressed closer for a better view. Security to Cafeteria 7. Emergency. We need medical and the voice over the communication system faltered. How did you explain this? Professor Quindal arrived first, his 6 legs carrying his insectoid form across the cafeteria with academic urgency. The elderly Manthari had been teaching xenobiology for 2 centuries, but nothing in his vast experience had prepared him for this scene. His compound eyes focused on Kree'tok's motionless form, then shifted to Maya, who was calmly finishing her meal. By the void's edge, he breathed, his translator barely managing to convey his shock. Student Chen, how did this happen? Maya looked up at him with those same emotionless eyes. He touched me first, she said simply, her voice carrying no more emotion than if she were discussing the weather. I defended myself. Defended yourself? Professor Quindal's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation in his species. Child, he's Kree'tok is dead. Yes, Maya agreed, taking another bite of her meal. Is that a problem? The question was asked with such genuine curiosity that it sent chills through every alien present. This wasn't bravado or shock. This was a being who truly didn't understand why everyone seemed so upset about what, to her, it had been a perfectly reasonable response to unwanted physical contact. Security Chief Brak-Tun thundered into the cafeteria, his energy weapon drawn and his tactical armor gleaming. The Coraxian warrior had seen combat across the outer rim, but he stopped dead when he processed the scene. One look at Kree'tok's twisted neck told him everything he needed to know about the level of force involved. Student Chen, he rumbled, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Step away from the table. Keep your hands visible. Maya finished chewing, swallowed, and looked up at him. Why? Why? Because you just killed a student with your bare hands. One hand, Maya corrected mildly. And he was strangling me, where I come from. That's considered justification for self-defense. Professor Quindal was frantically scrolling through his tablet, accessing student records. Kepler 442 billion, he muttered, his voice growing higher with each word. Oh, blessed ancestors, she's from Kepler 442 billion. The name sent a ripple of recognition through the more academically minded observers. Kepler 442 billion wasn't just another Deathworld, it was one of the most hostile planets in the known galaxy to produce sentient life. Gravity coefficient 1.8, Quindal read aloud, his voice barely steady. Predator to prey ratio 15:1. Atmospheric oxygen content 28%. Surface pressure 2.4 standard. Native megafauna reaching 30 metric tons average weight. Security Chief Brak-Tun's weapon slowly lowered as the implications sank in. She's been restraining herself. This whole time, she's been holding back. Maya nodded approvingly. My parents taught me to be careful around fragile things, she explained, as if discussing a perfectly normal childhood lesson. Your bones break so easily here. I have to remember that. She gestured vaguely at Kree'tok's corpse. I forgot for a moment. Sorry about the mess. The casual apology for accidentally killing someone with less effort than it took to open a door was perhaps the most terrifying thing anyone in that cafeteria had ever heard. Professor Quindal's tablet slipped from his nerveless grasp. The Academy's Crisis Management Center buzzed with frantic activity as officials scrambled to understand what had transpired in Cafeteria 7. Director Vashti, a distinguished Etherian whose translucent form shimmered with stress patterns, stood before the main holographic display as security footage played in agonizing slow motion. Run it again, she commanded, her voice tight with disbelief. Focus on the human's movement patterns. The hologram flickered, rewinding to show Maya's fatal motion frame by frame. Her hand rose from her lap in a movement so fluid, so controlled, that it looked almost gentle. There was no wild swing, no desperate struggle, just precise, economical efficiency that spoke of movements practiced 10,000 times. 17 milliseconds, reported tech analyst Zorpeak, his tentacles dancing across multiple control interfaces. from initial movement to completion. That's faster than most military combat enhancers can achieve. But it was the broader security review that truly shocked the investigative team. Weeks of footage revealed a pattern of harassment so systematic, so relentless, that it bordered on psychological torture. Maya Chen had endured food dumped on her head, personal belongings destroyed, verbal abuse in multiple languages, and physical intimidation that would have broken most students within days. Through it all, she had simply endured, never fighting back, never reporting the incidents, never even changing her routine. "Look at this," Counselor Trimala whispered, her feathered crest flattening with distress. Day after day, she sits in the same spot, eats at the same time, follows the exact same pattern. They've been tormenting her for 6 standard weeks. Director Vashti's form rippled with growing horror. Why didn't she report this? Our anti-harassment protocols are clearly posted in 17 languages. The answer came during Maya's formal interview, conducted in a sterile white room with enough recording equipment to document a treaty signing. Maya sat with perfect posture, hands folded in her lap, answering questions with the same mechanical precision she brought to everything else. "The harassment didn't interfere with my studies," she explained simply. "My grades remained optimal. I saw no reason to involve faculty. But surely you felt angry? Hurt? Something?" Counselor Trim-Ala leaned forward, her empathic abilities straining to detect any emotional resonance from the human. Maya considered this for a moment. "I felt mildly inconvenienced," she said finally. "Like having to step around a broken sidewalk or wait for slow-moving pedestrians. It was just background noise. And when Kree'tok grabbed your throat, that crossed the line from inconvenience to threat assessment. I responded accordingly." The casual way she described ending a life made every alien in the room unconsciously lean back. This wasn't trauma or psychological damage. This was simply how Maya Chen processed the world around her. But Maya wasn't unique. As word of the incident spread through the Academy's human student population, other stories began to emerge. Tales of carefully controlled strength, of deliberate restraint, of constant vigilance not to accidentally harm their more fragile classmates. "I broke 3 doors in my first week," admitted Marcus Webb during his voluntary interview. "Now I only push with 2 fingers. Even then, I have to be careful." Sarah Kim nodded grimly. "The Pixari engineering professor asked me to help move some equipment. I accidentally crushed his wrench when I tried to loosen a bolt. He thought I was using some kind of mechanical amplifier." "We're not the weakest species in the Academy," explained Tom Rodriguez, his voice carrying an edge that made the interview team nervous. "We're the most dangerous ones pretending to be harmless." The revelation sent shockwaves through the Galactic Educational Authority. Emergency sessions were called. Xenobiologists were consulted. The very definition of Deathworld was being reconsidered by beings who had spent centuries looking down on humans as primitive upstarts. "We've been living among apex predators," Director Vashti announced to the Emergency Council, her form now permanently shifted to stress patterns. "Beings whose idea of restraint is what we would consider superhuman control, and we've been bullying them." The silence that followed was heavy with implications. Every alien present was mentally reviewing their own interactions with human students, wondering how many times they had unknowingly stood at the edge of their own destruction and saved only by human mercy they had mistaken for weakness. In the depths of the Academy's medical bay, Kree'tok's body lay under analysis sheets, his neck twisted at an angle that defied the structural integrity of Vorthak anatomy. The autopsy would later reveal that the force required to inflict such damage was equivalent to a small spacecraft impact. Maya had done it with her left hand without standing up, while maintaining perfect table manners. The Grand Assembly Hall had never hosted a gathering quite like this one. Representatives from every major species in the Galactic Academy sat in perfect silence, their various forms of attention focused on the small human figure standing at the central podium. Maya Chen looked impossibly tiny beneath the soaring architecture designed to accommodate beings 3 times her size, yet somehow her presence filled the entire space. Director Vashti's introduction had been brief and to the point. In light of recent events, we felt it necessary for student Chen to address the Academy community directly. Maya stepped up to the microphone with her characteristic mechanical precision. Her voice, when amplified through the hall's acoustic systems, carried clearly to every corner of the vast chamber. My name is Maya Chen. I am from Earth, specifically from a colony world designated Kepler 442 billion. 3 days ago, I killed another student in what your legal system has classified as justified self-defense. The directness of her opening sent ripples of unease through the assembled crowd. No preamble, no emotional appeal, just facts delivered with surgical precision. I have been asked to explain human behavior to help prevent future misunderstandings. The truth is simple: we do not seek conflict, but we are exceptionally well equipped to end it. She paused, scanning the audience with those same emotionless eyes that had become legendary across campus social networks. Many of you have labeled humans as soft because we rarely engage in physical confrontation. You have mistaken our restraint for weakness, our patience for inability. This is a dangerous miscalculation. Maya reached into her pocket and withdrew a standard Academy drinking cup, the kind made from reinforced titanium steel alloy designed to withstand the grip strength of dozens of different species. She held it up for everyone to see. On my homeworld, this would be considered a fragile container suitable only for children. Without any visible effort, without changing her expression, she closed her fist around the cup. The metal groaned, buckled, then collapsed with a sound like thunder. When she opened her hand, twisted fragments of what had been molecular bonded alloy fell to the podium with musical chimes. The silence that followed was absolute. That was gentle pressure, Maya continued, brushing metal fragments from her palm. I used approximately the same force I would apply to pet a small animal. If I had applied actual force, the fragments would have become projectiles capable of penetrating hull plating. Several beings in the front rows unconsciously leaned back. Humans have a saying, speak softly and carry a big stick. We prefer peace not because we are weak, but because we understand the true cost of violence. When Kree'tok chose to escalate from harassment to physical assault, he crossed a line that exists in every human's mind. The boundary between annoyance and genuine threat. Maya's gaze swept across the assembly, and every being present felt the weight of that stare. We choose to be gentle. We choose to be patient. We choose to absorb insults and minor provocations because the alternative is usually fatal for everyone involved. But choice implies the ability to choose differently. She stepped back from the podium with the same controlled movements that had characterized everything about her. Learn from Kree'tok's mistake. Do not mistake our kindness for weakness. Do not test the limits of our patience. And never, ever, put your hands on us without permission. The assembly ended in stunned silence, beings filing out with new understanding and healthy fear. Now, weeks later, the Academy's social dynamics had shifted permanently. Maya sat in her usual spot in Cafeteria 7, eating her meal with the same mechanical precision that had become her trademark. But the space around her table had become a kind of neutral zone, respected, avoided, whispered about in hushed tones. New students quickly learned the unwritten rule: give the human girl plenty of space. The few who ignored this wisdom were quickly educated by their peers, who shared recordings of crushed metal and stories of Kree'tok's fate. Maya seemed oblivious to the change. She ate her meals, attended her classes, and maintained perfect academic scores. The only difference was the circle of empty tables that surrounded her, a buffer zone maintained by beings who had finally learned the difference between chosen restraint and actual inability. The galaxy had discovered something profound about Deathworld inhabitants. They didn't require peace. They simply preferred it. And that, perhaps, made them the most dangerous species of all.